Good afternoon, Shaemus. Thank you so much for joining me today to chat about the Radiopharmaceutical Therapies at PAX Boston, which is a new addition to the conference this year. So we'd just like to hear about your thoughts about the field, where is it going, and what is going on at this time. So throughout your years of experience in the field, what makes it so exciting now? Why is it everyone is jumping on the bandwagon?
Yeah, maybe thanks for having me and the kind words. Yeah, so I think what I've seen in the last few years, right, is every good idea eventually has its time. And in radiopharmaceuticals, what you've seen is sort of the building blocks of I-131 to Zeppelin to Bexar to Quadramet to then a product I worked on, Xofigo, and then importantly, products like Lutathera and Pluvicto having these big commercial successes. You sort of see a critical mass being developed in the space of drugs being developed and drugs being commercialized, which is really turning this potentially into the fifth pillar of oncology. So all of those kind of breakthroughs from the scientific production engineering side. So how do you make the isotopes, to how do you make the drug product, to how do you develop these products efficiently through the clinic is all kind of getting to the point now where it's reached a level of maturity where you see more and more products making that transition from clinical candidates all the way through commercial launches.
Mm. So so what are some of the major challenges then? Everyone is jumping into it. There must be a lot of new technologies, new clinical capabilities. So where do you see the major challenges for the industry at this time?
Yeah. So it's a great question, right? And ultimately, oncology is an area that has great unmet needs still today, despite years and years and decades of development and research trying to, get a hold on what is with human cancers. So what we see as really the enabling technologies in radiopharm are really kind of the isotope production. So the ability to produce isotopes at scale of interest. At Clarity, we work with copper-based isotopes we feel are uniquely scalable. And then importantly, the chelator really matters a lot, which it doesn't sound like it should, but the chemistry that actually holds the radioisotope in the body stably is very important, right? Without that, you don't have radiopharmaceuticals. So you see new chelators, coming out for different isotopes. We obviously work with our SAR chelator, which is tuned for copper, which we feel is the best in class for copper. But those two things kind of put together are what enables the space, but ultimately are the things that are most important for us long-term success. Clinically, what you see is most of these drugs seem to work, right? Classically, in oncology, you have about a 1 in 10 chance of making it from a phase one through a commercial
Hmm.
indication. Because of the way radiopharmaceuticals work with direct action onto cell, in addition to our ability to kind of tease out what are good candidates in things like phase zero studies or running cohorts to our therapy trials, we feel very strongly about things that could work. But ultimately, the hurdle is actually developing these from an engineering and supply standpoint to commercially viable products that you can supply to all the patients that need them. So that's a challenge for folks. For Clarity, I feel like it's an opportunity because we have a uniquely scalable supply chain.
Hmm.
But ultimately, that's going to be where the rubber hits the road in the next 5 to 10 years, is who can actually make these drugs at scale and provide them to patients.
So what's the next big major accomplishments then that will come into play, do you think, within the radiopharmaceutical field?
Yeah. So I think the things that are going to be important from a supply chain perspective are probably, can we scale actinium-225 supply to meet commercial demands, which is still an
Hmm.
open question, right? We have great minds working on it, and a lot of progress being made there. And then I think the more exciting thing from a clinical perspective you've seen in the next few years is we have patents around this that we license and other groups do too, which is a pre-targeting. I think what you've seen now is
Right.
this kind of first generation of agents, which is PSMA and SSTR2s.
Hmm.
You have things like we're doing, right? A dimer targeting, so two PSMA targeting moieties with our BIS PSMA, which is increasing retention and internalization, support for therapies. But what you're going to see, I think, is more novel approaches, right? Things like pre-targeting or new peptides that have a better tumor to non-target organ
Right.
ratio, right? Which
Hmm.
should
Hmm.
increase its therapeutic window. So I think that's what you're seeing now is kind of this first big push of this, I would call it the second wave of radiopharm being mainly Xofigo, Pluvicto, Lutathera. And now kind of how do we improve that? And the way we improve that is just getting more to the tumor and less to the areas where you don't want it to be. So that's the
Hmm.
best part of radio farm, right? Is you can see where all this stuff goes. And so ultimately, it's a math problem we all try to solve, which is how do
Right.
we increase that ratio, and how do we get more area under the curve?
Right, right. And what you're saying, like the different peptides or the pre-targeting, these are some of the topics we're covering at the Radiopharmaceutical Therapies Conference at PAX
Mhm.
Boston this May as well. So, what are you looking for at this event? I know you're joining us. We're very excited to have you as the chairperson. So, what are some of the presentations you're looking forward to, and what are some of the takeaways you hope to get from there?
Yeah, yeah. So first off, I think this is really filling a big need in this space, which is having these conferences where you have, discussions of supply chain, clinical development, and commercial strategy all under one roof in one building, with the same people.
Mm.
Because ultimately in radiopharm, how you develop these drugs, how you make these drugs, and how you plan to commercialize these drugs are all inherently tied together in ways that's not true in other spaces. What I'm most looking forward to is probably three presentations. I'm looking forward to Babish. John Babish is famous in the space. He's from
Mhm.
Boston. He's always got a great take on targeting and kind of how you can increase tumor uptake and decrease uptake in places you don't want it. Phil Kantoff is also doing a talk on Convergent and their antibody approaches to PSMA. Always great to hear him talk. And then I actually have one of my colleagues, Lauren Creedon's going to be giving a talk around how you actually operationalize these things from a clinical perspective, which is really important, because this is not cold oncolytics. This is not doing trials with enzalutamide. There are complications here, but those complications present opportunities for you to do well. So I think those are the three presentations I'm most looking forward to, and just mainly getting everyone in the same room to kind of talk about how the next 5 to 10 years of radiopharm is going to look.
Awesome. And that's also what I'm looking forward to because putting together this event together with your advice and many of the other speakers on the program is really exciting. And I look forward to seeing you there very soon. Thank you very much for sharing with us today.
Yep.
And I'll see you in May.
Sounds good.
Thank
All right.
you.
We'll see you. All right.
Thank you. See you then.